Solomon and Smith. Welcome to Solomon and Smith. I'm Jack Truckenpedder, that is Milo Garner. Neither one of us is Solomon or Smith, but together we are Solomon and Smith. You join us today for the second installment of our Fiction Through the Decades series with a longtime friend and supporter of the show, Andrew Nixon. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much.
For those of you who haven't seen our first video in this format, basically we go through every decade from 1800 to the new millennium, selecting our favourite works of fiction. We're also open to doing works of non-fiction, works of film at some point in the future, but this is another one where we're doing fiction. Andrew sent us his choices over on our Patreon, and they were very interestingly diverse from ours, and sort of I'm curious about the justifications for some of them.
I would heartily recommend liking, commenting, and subscribing, if possible, simultaneously. If you've done any of those before, do them again. Start a new account. Do what you have to do. And if that isn't enough, if you desire more virtue to be poured upon you, there is a Patreon linked below in which there are far more videos of arguably much higher quality available for all comers. And indeed, you can interact with the channel and end up in a video, apparently.
Before we jump into the 18aughts, I'm curious, Andrew, like how you found the process of compiling the list in general.
I found it, as I said in my comment, a game of two halves. I've certainly discovered I'm no expert on early 19th century fiction. The first few decades I'm struggling around a bit, but in the 20th century, there's so much to choose from. So I've all the way through, the line I've taken is things that have got into my soul in some way. Favorites rather than objectively great, although most of these are objectively great. And so enjoyability. What was interesting, I found, is that nearly all of these are books I read first in my teens or early 20s. But had I made a list in my 20s, I'm 50 next year, it would have been completely different. It would have had Catch-22. It would have had Anthony Burgess, probably Martin Amis, maybe George Orwell. So very, very different. That was quite interesting. And also looking at my list, it's incredibly British. There's nothing. I mean, no Americans, and I love reading American fiction, the great American novel type things. None of that's made it. Nothing from the continent, quite rightly. And the other thing, it's very male dominated, even though most of what I read now is female fiction. Nellie Fitzgerald, Beryl Bainbridge, people like that. That's what I mostly read when I read fiction. So that was interesting. I don't know what it means. There you go.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Should we start with the 18aughts?
Yes, definitely. Although, where's my poem?
Oh, we don't do that. Only the interviews get them. Look, I can write you a poem. I'm unprepared.
Yeah, please do.
But, okay, fine. No, I can get a poem up. Okay.
Paradise Lost.
I'll start. I'll
Paradise Lost. Researchers place a brick in a room and wait for something to happen, which it does. Everything does. Not necessarily there in the room and not necessarily involving the brick. Science marches on, the researchers sing, kissing the friendly lab supervisor on his lab goggles, till he cannot see through the lipstick. Only when they leave the lab and sit at the bar overlooking the foaming valleys, something else emerges. They play a game of cow or the sky, where one player points at something and the other must guess whether he is pointing at a cow or the sky. The existence of infinite planets with infinite cows, as well as skies under the Earth, complicates the game more than the first-time players expect, but it remains extremely easy, and its ease acts as a kind of gravity to draw the players' souls into zones of utter serenity.
Well, thank you very much. It was great. Now, this is where I say, is that a T.S. Eliot, or where is that?
Yeah, that was a T.S. Eliot. Right?
Yeah, I'm not come across that one. No, very good as always. Yeah, so the aughts. So yeah, we begin in slightly farcical style here because and I've got a big pile of books here by the way, props.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, slim pickings, but I seized on Tales from Shakespeare because I thought I would. What I remembered from that was the Arthur Rackham beautiful illustrations, color plates that he did about 100 years later. And Milo, I remember in your talk with Brian Cummings, you talked about the melancholy of forgetting. So
Mm.
the great melancholy of reading is the melancholy of forgetting. And that's something that cropped up a lot in this exercise is that you remember how you felt about something, but you forget a lot of the details. But how much greater then is the melancholy of forgetting what books you actually own? Because I found I have not one, not two, but three copies of Tales from Shakespeare, and none of them have the color plates by Arthur Rackham. There's one which has the black and white drawings, but none of the color plates. So that was a strange start. Anyway, what it is exactly as the title says. It's Shakespeare's plays retold as prose stories for kids as a sort of gateway drug to Shakespeare. There's 20 stories, all big ones, no histories. It was written by Mary and Charles Lamb, sister and brother. He took, they're quite well known literary figures at the time. He took the tragedies, she did the comedies. She was certified insane at the time they did it, and he was her carer because she'd stabbed their mother to death about a decade earlier. So
Mm.
that might be why she did the comedies. I don't know. Um, so the language is a sort of simplified, but it's kind of cod Shakespeare.
Okay.
Um, it's quite. Two questions spring to mind about this. One is if you remove all the Shakespeare language from Shakespeare, does it have any value
Hmm.
as stories in themselves? Uh, and the second thing is it a good gateway drug to Shakespeare for children? And I think yes is the answer to both those questions. I don't know if you've read this book or seen it or
No,
contemplated.
I haven't. I've read his Homer, his retellings of Homer for children, which was also James Joyce's
Right.
introduction to Homer as a child, the Charles Lamb retelling. But I've not read these. No.
Yeah, well, I think the idea really does work because both of my girls are in their teens now, doing their A levels and whatnot. And actually, it wasn't these ones. We've got these other kids' Shakespeare books. But it's the same idea. They love those, and they're almost the Shakespeare tales become like fairy stories and moral tales, and Shakespeare's almost like a Brothers Grimm or a Hans Christian Andersen type figure. So they, when they came to do their GCSEs and whatnot, they had no fear when we take them to Shakespeare plays. They've had no fear of it, and so it's worth its place in my little canon, I think, just for that.
Should we move on to the
Yeah.
1810s? There's all
Mm.
the Austens in the 1810s.
Well,
All the
exactly. Yeah. Thank God.
Austens.
Yes, the Austens. Yeah. Well, yeah. So the 1820s, they're barren, but thank God for Jane Austen. Just one more reason to be thankful for Jane Austen. I live very close to Bath. It's basically a Jane Austen theme park. I don't know if you've been. There's a festival every other week. But Jane Austen, I do love them all. It's something I have in common with women in my life, my daughters, my mother. I think men are still pretty reluctant to, maybe still reluctant to read Jane Austen. I don't know. They're mostly books about women getting married.
Yeah,
Um,
there's still a bit of that around, I feel. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
But if you can embrace Austen, I think, as a man, it's a very good thing. I think reading novels by women is really the only way a man can even hope to understand women at an even basic level. Um, that and maybe listening to Kate Bush. Uh, yeah. So, which one do you pick? Uh, I think Sense and Sensibility. There's a big leap after that, and the big three: Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and Persuasion. Um, Emma is generally regarded as the best, but I've gone for Pride and Prejudice.
Mhm.
It's the second one she wrote, but it's a big leap from Sense and Sensibility.
Mm.
It's just perfect, really. It's a comedy of manners, perfectly engineered plot. the point about this is that Pride and Prejudice is that everyone falls in love with the character of Elizabeth Bennet, probably including female readers, because she's so clever and funny,
Mm.
and
Martin
she's flawed.
Amis said that all
Mm.
male readers fall in love with Elizabeth at the moment that she walks through the mud. She trounces through the mud to get to the
Yeah,
other house. He said that's the moment that men fall in love with Elizabeth. And the moment that women fall in love with Mr. Darcy is when they learn about his income.
yeah. Well, Martin Imus is always saying didactic things like that. I mean, yeah, there's maybe some truth in it. But the point is, to fall in love with Elizabeth Bennet is, of course, to fall in love with Jane Austen, because it's obviously close to her, or only someone as lovely as Jane Austen could have invented someone as lovely as Elizabeth Bennet. So, there's lots in this list I've got. There's a lot of very strange people amongst the writers. You wouldn't want to know most of them, but you do want to know Jane Austen. You'd want her to sort of take the mickey out of you.
I
And the other
imagine
great
her
thing,
sort of silent in the corner of the party, sort of taking notes on everyone. I'd be a bit afraid of being in the same room as Jane Austen for the brutal caricature of myself.
well, yeah, there is a bit of that, I suppose. Yeah, it depends how confident you are. Uh,
How do you feel
um,
about the two major adaptations of the novel? You've mentioned the BBC series, and then there's also a rather lavish, though I think quite beautiful film. Do you think either of them managed to capture this Austen sentiment accurately?
oh, definitely, yeah. The BBC one is almost the perfect adaptation. Um, the I mean, that is something I'm forced to watch that at least once or twice a year by my daughters. It is just really good. It's so well cast. The film, I do really like it. My objection to it is that the Mr. Bennett is just totally wrong. He's a sort of country bumpkin in it. It's Donald Sutherland, isn't it? But Mr. Bennett is to me the most lovable character in this. Well, he's useless. He's a terrible father. He's completely negligent, but he's just so funny. The sort of he is laconic English dry humor taken to the absolute max.
Yeah, and
I
kind
mean,
of sadistic. There's a kind of subtle sadism in Mr. Bennett. Like he's found himself married to this completely ridiculous woman, and like
yes.
the compensation for his life is to just these little sadistic jabs the entire time, almost every single line by line, every
Well,
bit of dialogue.
the ultimate one comes right at the end, and I reread Pride and Prejudice, I think last summer, and I just couldn't believe it because I'd forgotten about it. I don't think it's in the adaptations, or if it is, I didn't notice. Right at the end, when Elizabeth has got engaged to Darcy, and of course all the family think she hates him. They all sneer at Darcy. So she tells Mr. Bennet. And by this stage, Jane's got engaged to Bingley, and Lydia's had the whole thing with Wickham. And Mr. Mr. Bennet says, "Yeah, yes, I'm getting to know Mr. Darcy a lot better." I'm paraphrasing. Um, I like all my sons-in-law. I think Wickham is my favourite, but I think I should like your husband just as well as Jane's, something like that. And just that, I think Wickham is my favourite, just totally undercuts all the drama. It just makes it ludicrous, everything you've been through. It's just, and yeah, I LOL'd. Yeah, it's LOL funny, 200 years on.
Um,
Yeah,
the 1820s, a barren
Yeah.
decade for you.
Barry
El
Decade.
Zilcho, nothing.
I just don't think I've read anything from the 1820s. I mean, there wasn't a lot there. It's very slim pickings. You come up with a cat one, and you come up with Don Juan, didn't you?
Yeah, or Pushkin, or Red and the Black, if I'm only allowed
I've not
prose.
read that, no. But I do like
Continental, not
I
right.
like the sound of the cat one. That sounds right up my street.
It's yeah, no, give it a look. And E.T.A.
Oh,
Hoffman himself also a composer of music, so you can sort of listen to Hoffman while reading Hoffman, and then enter the Hoff verse,
oh
as it
wow,
were.
it's
Worth
multimedia.
doing. Yeah, worth doing. So,
I
given the
shall.
1820s only produced three worthy works, we can immediately pounce into the 1830s with a
Yes,
number of extremely worthy works.
yes.
Which did you choose?
Well, I chose one that is certainly not probably a great work, but I have a reason for picking it. It's the Pickwick Papers, um, which was a serialized thing, monthly in parts, which made the name of Dickens, made him a literary superstar. Illustrated by Halbert K. Brown, better known as Fizz, who was he was Boz, Charles Dickens. It's not really a novel, it's a sort of loose set of comic incidents and mishaps. It's Pickwick is this benevolent retired chap who sets off with his chums, whose names are, hang on, I've got notes here, Tupman, Winkle, and Snodgrass. That's it. So already you can see Dickens's love of silly names, which he took much too far, of course, with his Chuzzlewits and Pumblechooks and whatnot. So great silly names. They sort of go lads on tour in many, many inns. There's endless inns and dining rooms and clubs, and they sort of have a project to investigate England and its sort of customs. There's a brilliant sidekick called Sam Weller, Sam Vella. He gets his V's and W's the wrong way round, which is a funny voice. And he's like sort of Sancho Panza to Pickwick's Don Quixote. He's a sort of servant who's much more intelligent, much more worldly. Anyway, so that's basically the overview of it. The reason I picked it, even though it's not the greatest Dickens, is because it reminds me that reading is a sort of physical activity. It's a hobby, like fishing. And so you can, some things you read because you want to learn ideas, you want to improve yourself, but sometimes you just want to disappear into a fat book. The sort of the progress of the bookmark. With a lot of non-fiction, you you're looking forward, how far have I got to go? But when you get into a big work of fiction that you're really enjoying, you're glad that you've still got a lot left.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Pickwick really summarizes that. I read it when I was, I don't know, 13 or something. So that's where it makes it in. And also it's a sort of ancestor of that English humor, which I do love. Jerome K. Jerome, P.G. Wodehouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not, you're not alone in selecting it as a favorite Dickens. I know Chesterton, it was his favorite Dickens novel.
Right.
I was speaking to like a guy at the Dickens Society who also said, no, it's the best one. It's him.
Really?
And there is this joy in Pickwick of Charles Dickens discovering that he is Charles Dickens. It's the sort of extreme giddiness and energy of this talent being unleashed. Yes, I know the Sam Vella bump is maybe the most significant publishing bump in history. The first two little installments of Pickwick Papers doing middlingly well. I think a few hundred were sold, and then as soon as Sam Vella was introduced, like 40,000, which is completely insane in the 1830s.
Right.
And then he remains a celebrity for the rest of his life. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you wonder just how literary culture functioned when these serials were so popular and so frequent. It's really difficult. We have no proper equivalent. I mean, YouTube serials or episodic television, but I don't really think it's the same as sort of consuming what becomes a novel in these piecemeal chunks. And for an author, an author of literary fiction like Dickens to emerge through weekly magazine clippings, and then for him to make it onto, the 20 best novels of the last 200 years.
Yeah.
Probably not what he expected.
No, indeed. No. No, they're interesting. Well, then my next choice was also published in serial form, I think, first.
Yes, I think it was the
Yeah.
standard throughout the 19th century, certainly in England. But yeah,
Yeah.
your 1840s choice.
Yeah, my 1840s choice is Vanity Fair, Thackeray. There it is. Another big fat. I love these Penguin classics, by the way. They always seem better in this form. I don't know why. There's a whole run of them coming up here. So yeah, Vanity Fair, the great satirical novel of the it's set, isn't it? It's written 1840, but set earlier than that because it has Waterloo in it. So Vanity Fair, the title is comes from Pilgrim's Progress, which Vanity Fair is the worldly marketplace of selfishness and fraud and ambition. And vanity means obviously waste and uselessness as well as narcissism, I suppose. And it's a fair, everyone's buying and selling themselves, which is very appropriate to the book. And famously subtitled "A Novel Without a Hero," which I guess was innovative. I don't know, but it has, of course, the great anti-heroine Becky Sharp. To me, the first half when she's on the rise is much more enjoyable than the end of the book. Um, she's so cunning and funny and shameless. Um, as it goes on, you like her less and less. She's so horrible to her son. Um, but it's a great ride up to then. It's a funny one. There's no really likable characters in it. I don't know if you feel that way.
I've not read it. This is a blind
Right.
spot for me. Yeah, but I like
Yeah.
lots of things with no likable characters. The
There-
Wolf of Wall Street springs to mind.
there's a big jarring emotional moment where there's this sort of faithful chap called Dobbin who's been pursuing throughout the whole book. He's been holding on to his little sad little love for this Amelia, whose husband is killed at Waterloo. And eventually, after he's given her all of his money, he's worked and helped her. She eventually accepts him, and then he says the prize wasn't worth having because she's such a drip. Anyway, it's a big powerful moment which stands out in my memory. Yeah, it's a cold kind of book, I think, but it's
Yeah, it
savage about everyone.
sounds a little bit like evil Jane Austen in a way. You have all these sort
Mm,
of conniving genius characters, but they're horrible rather than sort of ultimately redeemable. I mean, you have some horrible characters in Austen, but it's like we've got this main compelling woman who things revolve around, but this Becky Sharp sounds like yeah, she's
yeah,
the anti to the pro of Austen.
yeah, the evil Elizabeth Bennet plus ambition, I suppose. Yeah, that's not bad. But yeah, as I say, she kind of fades away from the narrative in the last, I don't know, third of the book. It's a long time since I read it, but and the interest does wane accordingly. Anyway, it's a great book, well worth your time. Shall I
Speaking
carry on?
of another great book we've never, or I've never read,
Well,
absolute massive blind spot. This next one, the 1850s. I mean,
Hmm.
this has been on the shelf consistently for about 15 years, and I'm like,
This is
it's
nah, not today.
continental. This is continental. How did it
Yeah.
slip in? What the hell happened, Andrew?
well, there's a funny story here. Just hold your horses. Now I looked at the 1850s, what was published then, and the one that leaped out was Bleak House because that is my favourite Dickens. But I thought I don't want two Dickenses. I can't do that. Um, what else? Oh, Madame Bovary. Yeah, I remember reading that a while ago. That was a great book. It was really, groundbreaking in its style. But what I really remembered from it was this awful scene at the end where Emma Bovary poisons herself and regrets doing it and has this protracted, agonizing death. And I thought, well, that's satirizing the times or something. Anyway, I revisited it for this exercise, and yeah, it's just sadistic. It's horrible. So I've actually, and apparently Flaubert did read the Marquis de Sade, so it may be literally sadistic. So I've chucked it out. I've consigned this.
No, Madame
Whoa!
Bovary, bad book. We don't like, yeah,
Consigned
rubbish.
it to the flames and brought back in Bleak House. You don't have any French in here. This is British.
No, Bleak House. What a book! What a
Yeah,
book!
now we're
So
talking.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the word I have for Dickens is abundant. Like Pickwick, there's always another inn. There's always another plot line in Bleak House. Um, shall I recap it very quickly for people who
Yes.
haven't read it? So the central sort of engine of it is this Chancery court case, Jarndyce and Jarndyce, which is a disputed inheritance case, which has been going on forever, ruins everyone who gets involved in it. Um, it's a strange book. There's two different narrative voices. There's Esther, who's first person, and that alternates with this third person, in the present tense. It's a very foggy book, I would say. There's a lot of fog. Uh, it's a foggy plot. There's a moral fog. It's literally foggy. Um, there's a very, very complicated web of subplots which none of the characters can see, are connected, except for this fantastic character, Tulkinghorn, who's this very sinister lawyer, who is able to sort of connect things up. He promptly gets bumped off. There's some fabulous characters that people probably have heard of, like Mrs. Jellyby, who's this a philanthropist who's sending money to children overseas while her own children are neglected and starving. It's a good bit of satire.
There's a good bit when one of Mrs. Jellyby's, while Mrs. Jellyby is talking about this faraway African village, her children sort of scream in agony, but then turn it into a yawn. The most absurd setups. Yeah. And everyone, he doesn't let any of the characters, he doesn't let you forget about their quirks. You know, the guy who the sort of snobby aristocratic guy who's all about deportment. The word deportment features in every single sentence that refers to him.
Yeah. Is that Skimpole he's the most annoying.
Yeah, Skimpole is dangerous. Like I feel like it's dangerously close to my own life sometimes.
Oh,
like
really?
that Skimpole is my shadow personality.
Oh, that's terrible because he's one of the most hateful characters I've ever come across.
Yeah, he's the most evil man in all fiction. Yeah.
He pretends to be a childlike innocent, and he's actually just a sort of irresponsible parasite.
That's Jack.
That's Jack. There you go. But what a poet. Anyway, it's an amazing work, isn't it? Don't need to say more than that, really.
Yeah, and
control
like
of such a
interestingly,
huge web.
dark and sort of cynical. There's shades of Kafka in it, in this in the miscarriage of justice, in this Burma, this sort of dystopia where all the lawyers are trying to keep every court case going on for as long as humanly possible, just to delay justice as long as possible and sap up all the funds.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It is Chancery is a Kafkaesque institution, isn't it?
Yeah, we'd love to get like an actual Chancery lawyer on to discuss Bleak House on the show at some point. I think I might do some emailing. Shall we move on?
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the 1860s. My comments stand also for Through the Looking Glass. Well, I don't know. I don't need to sort of explain this book, do I? Well, it's the ultimate "it was all a dream" book, isn't it? So I think that's what stands out for me. I reread it again earlier this year because I was writing an article actually about the hunting of the Snark, and so I reread Alice as well. I think what it does is it perfectly captures how annoying dreams are and frustrating they are. So at the beginning, she's trying to get into the garden and she just can't, everything keeps stopping her. And Through the Looking Glass, it's even more so. If you remember, she's trying to get away from the house and all the paths lead her back to the front door, which is very dreamlike. And all these incredibly fractious, irritating conversations she has to have with everyone, where they go down sort of blind alleys and they nitpick over words she uses. There's a bit where at the beginning where it's actually the mouse is speaking and he says something about the Archbishop. Yes, even Stigand, the patriotic Archbishop of Canterbury, found it advisable. Found what? Said the duck. Found it, said the mouse rather crossly. Of course you know what it means. So it's that kind of thing where every little word is sidetracked by some red herring.
It reminds me a little because we recently done an episode on the Aeneid, which will come out this Friday. Or no, last Friday. I don't know when this is getting uploaded. It's there eventually. All right, guys, calm down. Anyway, there's a section towards the end which is actually borrowed from the Iliad, where Aeneas is fighting Turnus. And in the battle, there's this wonderful simile used that Turnus is sort of getting outmaneuvered, and it's as though he's trying to walk in a dream or run in a dream. And you can't quite get any
Yeah,
speed. You're just sort of floating around, and it's wonderful to hear someone 2,000 years ago expressing what always feels like a very contemporary, present feeling. But you get a similar this frustration in Alice has that mood to it, trying to move around, and the world isn't quite giving. And I really enjoy that Alice is pre-Freudian because I think, Freudian dream study stuff in a way ruined dreams in all art forever because
mm,
there is this sense there has to be one thing means another thing. One must join up the dots and figure out the overall meaning of the dream. Whereas Lewis Carroll still seems to exist in the dream universe where you're stumbling through things have some kind of connection which is abstract. It's all a bit psychedelic and pulsing and flowing. We aren't looking for the key other than the literal key that says, oh, right, it's just about her father. I see. Great book. We're not
yeah.
in that, we're in a different realm.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think the pre-Freudian thing it's the same with the hunting of the snark, which I wrote about, which is that it's been interpreted millions of times in ludicrous ways by adults, because dreams sort of demand interpretations and nonsense. Adults tend to see as a sort of puzzle you have to solve, but children just take it as it is because they already live in a world of sort of arbitrary rules and journeys that have no meaning as to why they're going there and rituals they don't understand and tremendously confident adults pronouncing things. So children just take it as it is, you know. Why does Alice grow bigger? Because she eats the cake that makes her bigger. And why does she go smaller? Well, because the drink makes you smaller. So I do think it's great fun to interpret Carol and nonsense, but actually he resisted it. I think he definitely did for the snark and just said, I don't know what it means.
Yeah, no, that's that. I think leaving that there's great.
Leave it there.
1870s. I feel you may be joining the choir every
Yeah.
single time we do this episode. Just end
Yeah,
up
it
skipping
would
the
be funny if
18th.
every single
Well,
episode.
yeah, Middlemarch. It's the only one, isn't it, where I've got the same as you. But you can't not. I think it's probably the best work on my list. It recently won a poll, didn't it, for the greatest novel?
Yeah, it's one
Uh,
of those good ones where the sort of the big heads and the small heads are all in agreement. It's like a
yeah,
Goodfellas situation or 2001 in the film world. Everyone agrees. Doesn't matter who you are. Universal agreement. It's a great film. It's a great book.
yeah. I like this is one where I'd like to read a couple of bits, just very briefly, if that's all right,
Yeah,
just to
please. Yeah.
illustrate. I mean, surely George Eliot is the most emotionally intelligent novelist the country's ever produced. She understands men better than we know ourselves. You've got this constant dialogues. Most of the book is dialogues between two characters where she slips between their points of view and shows not only how they're misunderstanding each other, what they're saying can be misunderstood, but how they're sort of lying to themselves or half lying. And it's the final paragraph. I don't know, did you mention this, Jackie, when you talked about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Uh,
one of the most gorgeous bits of English prose anywhere.
well, it's a summation, isn't it, of everything she's been trying to tell us through the novel. And so I will just read it if that's all right, just of the last couple of sentences. So this is talking. This is now years later. Dorothea is now an old lady. It's in the finale. It's like a sort of postscript. Um, and this is talking about Dorothea and what she'd done in her life. Her finely touched spirit still had its fine issues, though they were not widely visible. Her full nature, like that river of which Cyrus broke the strength, spent itself in channels which had no great name on the earth. But the effect of her being on those around her was incalculably diffusive, for the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. It does give you this, it gives me tingles, that thing. It's just so powerful and true. I don't know if you feel like that. It does, it brings tears to the eyes.
Hmm.
It's an astonishing thing, but um, this idea that real heroism and villainy can be found in mundane, domestic things. It's not a lot of big things happen in the novel. They're just small things, but there's real evil. Casaubon's little codicil in his will to screw her up after his death. And there's real heroism as well. It's just brilliant.
It's a sentiment that I think the English are actually quite good at. This the unimportant people are the most important people. I'm thinking of Gray's Elegy in a Country Churchyard, like Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey. There's loads of beautiful statements of this sentiment throughout English literature. In a way that really, I don't know, I can only speak for the German, but it's less there. It's certainly less there. Germany is like, no, the great people in extremely visited tombs are really cool.
Yeah. There's another that she throws in though, when you read it, it's astonishing how she just throws in these great philosophical sentences, just or it throws them away. There's another one I picked out, which I actually put in my notes. Hang on, let me get it up. Oh yeah, this is just in the middle of a big paragraph. Men and women make sad mistakes about their own symptoms, taking their vague, uneasy longings, sometimes for genius, sometimes for religion, and oftener still for a mighty love. So that's the sort of sentence that stops you in your tracks, So these feelings I have, I'm massively overinterpreting them. Yeah, so that's kind of chucked away.
And the sort of Spinozan George Eliot voice jumps in from time to time throughout the novels. Like you can tell this, I mean, she starts writing at what, 35, 36? And everything before then is kind of like moral philosophy, or she's only really concerned with philosophical writing, particularly moral philosophy. So that whenever these third person narrator little sections come in, little asides on the situation, they feel like they're coming from a wellspring of deep thinking, of deep thought. It doesn't feel like in Dickens, Dickens's third person narrator in Bleak House, for example, where you can tell he's sort of just it's happening. It's more improvisational. The voice, it's just. He's finding funny little paradoxes in the way people are behaving, and then he ramps those paradoxes up and plays with it almost in present tense. Whereas George Eliot, there's almost a preternatural ability to jump in and be completely aware and absorptive of everything that's going on in a scene, in every little movement of the soul.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's perfectly expressed. Yeah. Yes, what a book. I mean, what can I say about it that hasn't been said? Right, this is more like it. Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Virginia Woolf called Middlemarch the only book for grown-up people. Who needs it? Who needs grown-up books? Treasure!
Absolutely. Well, this is a children's book, definitely, unequivocally, but it doesn't talk down to children. The language is, it's pretty highfalutin. Anyway, the ultimate ripping yarn, treasure map, sex marks the spot, one-legged men with parrots, 15 men on the dead man's chest. Jim Hawkins he's the son of an innkeeper. He gets hold of a treasure map because of this old pirate, Billy Bones, who turns up. And he sets sail with what they call Squire Trelawney and Dr. Livesey. And they go off to find buried treasure. But all unbeknownst to them, the ship's cook is Long John Silver, is secretly a pirate, and they have a mutiny. They have some battles when they get to the island. Lots of exciting things happen. There's two things that stick out for me. The absolutely two terrifying villains. One is Blind Pew. He's this old pirate who turns up at the inn at the beginning, and he has the black spot, which is a signal that you're going to be killed. So he's absolutely horrible. He gets killed by horses, I think. And then Long John Silver himself, because he's one of the great person you think is a goodie that you love, turns out is revealed as a villain in this very exciting scene where Jim is hiding in an apple barrel. overhearing the sort of the mutineers plotting. Um, and Long John Silver, what's scary about it is that you're not quite sure if his affection, he seems to have this affection for Jim, and you're not quite sure if it's real or not. And he's so charismatic. He survives at the end to sort of do other deeds.
In film adaptations, the Long John Silver Jim relationship is a lot more unambiguously positive. It's more of a father-son thing. And I remember being struck when I read the book, a teenager I was, that Long John was much more ambiguous. You were always kind of a little uncertain.
And the great names. The other thing about this book is that I talk about Dickens' names. I reckon that Stevenson is the greatest genius for names, that all you have to do is hear them and a character is conjured. So I've got a list here of some of the characters in this book. So Long John Silver, obviously, Blind Pew. Billy Bones, Ben Gunn. Remember Ben Gunn? He's the little guy on the beach. Squire Trelawney, Israel Hands, Job Anderson, Mr. Arrow, Black Dog, Captain Flint. Just great names.
Yeah, did you ever see that Disney enormous folly Treasure Planet, which I think was their biggest flop, but also for most of it a very faithful adaptation of Treasure Island, just sort of souped up into space. There's a middle section which very movingly recounts the Long John Silver Jim relationship.
Right.
Enough to destroy a man.
Yeah, I think the Muppets one is my go-to. You're saying all these names, and I am seeing Muppets and Tim
Muppets.
Curry.
Yeah. Their Christmas Carol, of course, is very good as well.
David Bentley Hart claims that Robert Louis Stevenson is one of the greatest prose artists that this island ever produced.
Yeah.
Would you think sentence by sentence level? Is
No.
David Bentley Hart maybe a bit carried away?
Yeah, I don't want to argue with him, but no, it's the plot. It's just a fantastic plot. I'm not really a big plot man. I'm not bothered about plots usually, but that's a plot and a half.
Speaking of plotlessness, let's go to the 1890s.
Diary of a Nobody. Now, I could easily have picked Three Men in a Boat, but I didn't want to pick the same as you, Jack. But this is the other sort of
the yin to its yang.
Yeah, quite right. Very, very. I think it's still very, very funny. I've been sort of dipping into it again in preparation, and it is funny. It's the comedy of Bathos. So just to give an outline of it, it was a series in Punch by these two brothers, Punch magazine, George and Weedon Grossmith, who were sort of involved in the theatre world, and they did this. One of them did the illustrations as well. I think that was Weedon. Anyway, it's the form of a diary of this guy, Charles Pooter. And sort of that name, Pooterism, has sort of gone into the language, probably less known now, but it certainly was, to describe the sort of middle class, lower middle class, sort of quite pompous sort of type, where there's a constant gap between his expectations and his view of himself and how everyone else treats him and his dignity. So it covers about 15 months or something, I think it is, of little domestic things. I guess nothing important happens. That's the point of it. It's like a sitcom, isn't it? It's very much the forerunner to
Seinfeld. Yeah, it's
Captain Mannering. Yeah, Seinfeld. Maybe not Seinfeld. Yeah. Maybe Seinfeld.
Well, because of the nothingness of it. It has the nothingness of Seinfeld. It's people talking, the situations never rise above a certain sort of amount of banality.
Yeah. George is very Pooterish, isn't he? Because he's always on his dignity, and it's always going wrong. I was thinking more Captain Mannering from Dad's Army. Even David Brent a bit, I suppose.
David Brent's actually a very equivalent figure to.
Yeah, we should do a kind of genealogy of David Brent. When did the English invent David Brent? Goes to sort of Paleolithic cave images. The first Brent as such beneath an ox crushed.
Some Paleolithic tomb in Orkney.
Dipping into it, I did laugh when he he has he has these neighbours called Comings and Going, and of course, what he loves his own jokes, and he makes a joke to both of them that says, "Isn't it funny how Cummings is always going and going is always coming?" And I laughed and laughed and laughed, you know. And his wife laughs her head off, but they're mortally offended. They think it's a bit much to have jokes about their own names. That was funny. Okay, are we heading into the 20th century?
Into the new
Right.
century. God, this is our fourth children's book.
Well, I told you I picked ones that have a sort of emotional connection. That's what it's like. As I said, it would have been very different when I made this list earlier, which is interesting. Perhaps you should do this every 10 years and see how it changes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like in your 20s, you're a bit ashamed of the children's book feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I remember right, this was David Bentley Hart was talking about this on our first interview with him, how in his age he's just kind of coiled up into loving Edwardian children's fiction more than any other literature, and that, the full loop round.
Yeah.
Well,
And The Wind in the Willows is one of the
mm,
most beautiful titles
mm,
in all fiction. What a glorious title. Like a Japanese like
isn't
poet
it just?
line.
Yeah. And it doesn't really tell you much about what happens in the book, but well, it kind of does. Yeah, this one goes very, very deep. This is as deep as it gets for me. So my first earliest memory, I would say, of the transcendent joy of reading was sitting in my primary school. We're upstairs, a few of us in the window. We were allowed to read Wind in the Willows. Outside in the playground was this enormous horse chestnut tree, and the wind was playing on it. It wasn't a willow. But I just had this feeling, I suppose, a numinous feeling that reading can give you, where I was in, in another world. The book was a window into a world. I don't know. It's an elusive feeling which I've had every now and again since, and that can't be really articulated. It captured fleetingly, and that was from Wind in the Willows. So it obviously has a very deep connection to me. It's a very, very strange book. Um, so written by Kenneth Grahame, who's like a secretary in the Bank of England or something. Really, it's two different books with some other strange bits tagged in. So it's the story of Mole coming out and exploring the world, and that's a lovely, quiet sort of book and meeting Ratty, who's probably the most likable character in it, and Badger. And then there's the wacky adventures of Mr. Toad. And then, as well as that, and it's very strange because some of the animals are kind of human-sized and wear clothes and go to shops, and some are wild, like horses. They don't talk. There's no logic to it. But there's loads of lyrical, descriptive nature passages written in totally uncompromising adult language. It's not no dumbing down for children at all. And then there's a very, very weird chapter called The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, in which we discover that I guess the animals have their own religion. But there's a god, which is Pan, who appears, and then they're sort of sucked towards him in a trance. They see Pan. This is Moley and Ratty, and then he makes them forget. It's not quite sure why. It's a very strange sort of pagan intrusion. There's another strange chapter as well, which doesn't get talked about as much. It's called Wayfarers All, where Ratty meets a ship's rat, and that's all about the sort of the call of migration. And Ratty goes into a sort of trance. Is about to walk out the door, and Moley wrestles him to the ground and snaps him out of it, and he recovers Ratty by writing poetry. So it's a strange, strange book. There's many, many layers to it. I was rereading it again for this, and there's a bit I'd forgotten, which is just amazing, where Badger's home, it turns out, is built in a Roman villa or city, a ruin, where the earth has come down, and then the sort of vegetation has grown up, and the badgers have moved back in, and the badgers were there long before the people. They come and go, and now they're back. So yeah, it's a quite remarkable book, really. Very odd.
Yeah, and that actually, that little bit you revisited seems to me that one of the real key themes in this kind of Edwardian period, looking backwards, looking forwards. We've got Toad and his motor car obsession, modernity, trumbling into this kind of this nature paradise, but equally we have these Roman ruins. And I think some of your choices later down the list also reflect this
Mm.
kind of this idyll, maybe lost to modernity, this period of understanding or rejigging the self. But I think it's a great detail that I hadn't remembered, the Roman ruin, because that
Mm.
really throws it back in a long way. That there are ruins upon ruins in England.
Yeah, that's right. I've always found that fascinating. The idea that, sort of what came after the Romans was worse. Um,
Well, I quite like the Anglo-Saxons. I thought they built a fine culture until that terrible year, 1066. Greetings, fellow mourners. If you've made it this far, you might be interested to hear that we have two bonus decades with Andrew over on Patreon, the 2000s and the 2010s, where you'll also find unreleased interview footage and unique material not featured on the main channel. You'll find the link for that down in the description. Anyway, going into 1910s, another
yeah,
classic of the Edwardian literature, maybe
well, it is.
the
Yes, of
final
course.
classic of the Edwardian literature.
Yeah. Well, I do love A Room with a View. But that was knocked out by Wind in the Willows from the previous decade. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, Edwardian England, as you said, and there's some of those themes you just mentioned, Milo, very much in this, the sort of older England, the modern England. And it's a very dense, isn't it? There's a lot going on in
I
Howard's
should
End.
we should just specify for the viewers we are talking about Howard's End by E.M.
Sorry,
Forster.
yeah.
I
I
thought
think
when I
it-
said the final masterpiece of the Edwardian period, it was
everyone's just like, oh yeah, yeah. We need
Right.
just a little bit of best practice to say the title of the books.
You've got an intelligent audience, they'll have no problem. Yeah, so obviously I'm talking about Howard's End. Um, I would say Forster's probably considered his greatest novel. A quick synopsis: it's about um, two families who get intertwined, the Schlegels, Margaret and Helen, and they're a bit like the sisters in Sense and Sensibility. So there's the older one is more sensible, and the younger one, Helen, is very, very passionate and intense. And the older one is the steady one. They get entangled with another family who are called, hang on, consults notes, the Wilcoxes, that's it, who are rich, practical. I think he owns a factory. But the odd one out in that family is the mother, the wife of Henry Wilcox, who's Ruth, who is a kind of she's got a mystical attachment to this house, Howard's End. Oh, it's very complicated. She befriends Margaret and leaves her the house. Leaves her a note that bequeaths her the house. Margaret ends up marrying Henry. Henry hides this information, so that's where the sort of the tension is. And then there's this other big subplot with a chap called Leonard Bast, who's he's an autodidact. He's lower down the social scale. He's trying to improve himself, and sort of the liberals they are, Margaret and Helen, they try and help him better himself. It all backfires. He ends up being killed by a falling bookcase, which I assume is symbolic. um,
Yeah, I remember a scene near the beginning of, I think, one of the Wilcoxes thundering down to Howard's End again in a motor car, and there's I think someone very unwilling to get in, something along these lines, but it's this
hmm,
Toad and Toad Hall style
right.
thing, fear. But I also like Leonard Bast as a sort of more sympathetic view of a Puta style figure. He's different in his mindset, but his sort of stratum is of that style. And Foster's, I guess he's just a very empathetic style of writer, but he would be a figure easy to mock, really easy to make him really
Mm.
funny, really stupid. And he makes plenty of slips throughout. But he's not. He's tragic, sort of, because of
Yeah.
him attempting to break. He really is earnestly trying to break out of his limitation, and the inability to properly do so, and the inability for these, especially the Schlegels, to actually understand why he can't, is it becomes tragic rather than, as it could be, sort of grotesquely funny. Look at this little man trying to learn to read, coming to the Beethoven, and so on.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on in Forster, isn't there? Which I get it's you can study him, can't you?
His
Which I
short
haven't really done.
stories, underread, wonderful short stories.
Yeah.
Like the machine stops, all those little fables are fantastic. It's very, very speculative fiction. Maybe not what people are expecting from his, realist novels, but yeah, just fantastic. There's one called The Celestial Omnibus, which
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
what a crazy story, but it's
yeah,
great.
yeah, really, yeah, love Forster.
Yeah,
Um,
great. Add it to my list.
Yeah. Move on to the 20s. We're getting into I've not read stuff territory
Good.
now.
Good.
Thankfully. Yeah, about time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, have you read this one, Milo? This
No,
is
no,
Richard
it looked like a
Hughes.
very interesting choice for the 1920s, a really stacked decade.
Well, I know I've knocked out Ulysses. God knows what else. I make no apology. This is seriously good, and it's criminally underread. So I will, I'm glad you haven't read it because I will give you the sort of outline of what it's about.
Should
So
we say the title of the book? I
did
hate
I
to
not
be a
say it?
pedant.
A High Wind in Jamaica by Richard Hughes.
Thank you.
Anyway, yeah, so this is a seriously good book. So the title High Wind in Jamaica may conjure some idea you have. If I tell you it's about British children in Jamaica in the whose home is in the sort of mid 19th century. Their home is destroyed by a hurricane. They're sent home by sea, captured by pirates, who kind of befriend them. They're kind of friendly pirates, and then return to England. You'll probably have some idea of what this book might be like, sort of swallows and Amazons, adventure. Banish all that from your mind. Completely banish that. There's not one scintilla of sentimentality in this book. It is it's absolutely extraordinary. Because what's frightening about it is are the children are the terrifying part of it. So it's very much, Lord of the Flies is a greatly inferior sort of taking of some of the ideas. Um, so I'll give you a more detailed version, which will help you understand what it's like. So we start in so slavery has just ended in Jamaica and opens with a first person narrative recalling these two old white ladies who have been starved to death because their slaves who then became servants have just kind of abandoned them. That's apropos of nothing. And we don't see the first person again until the very last paragraph of the book. And between that, we have a third person narrative and we meet these children. There's five of them, and their home is destroyed in a remarkable, well written, devastating hurricane that destroys their house. So the parents get worried and decide to send them back to England. They get captured the ship they're on gets captured by pirates, and there's a misunderstanding, which means the kids are stuck on the pirates' boat. And these are pretty hapless pirates, so they're not armed, because if they were armed, they could be done for piracy. So, and then a relationship kind of develops. There's this Captain Johnson's fantastic character who takes a shine to Emily, who's she's like 10 years old. She's the second oldest. The oldest is a boy called John, and he we've assumed he's like the main character. He falls to his death about a third of the way through the book, and he's instantly forgotten by his siblings. They don't mention him again. Totally forgotten. So then, then later on, the pirates capture a Dutch boat, and the captain is injured, and he's put in the sick bay where Emily is, and he's wrapped up in his hammock, and she has this kind of panicky moment, and she stabs him to death. And the pirates are absolutely horrified by this, but they think it's this other girl, an older girl, Margaret, and they're so horrified they pick up Margaret and chuck her in the sea. And then the very last sort of section, the first person comes back in again, and he's seeing Emily grown up a bit more at a school, and he says you wouldn't be able to tell which one was Emily, who'd been through all this trauma. You wouldn't be able to tell. She's just chattering away like all the others. So it's also really well written. It's funny despite all those horrible things happening. Very funny. It was a big hit at the time. I just don't think anyone reads it anymore.
Yeah, I like the sense that we had Vanity Fair as the evil Pride and Prejudice. Now we've got this as the evil Treasure Island. Maybe all your picks just have an evil
Evil twin.
one in the 20th century waiting to be revealed.
David Lynch style evil Cooper or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to Richard Hughes. He wrote virtually nothing else. He wrote a very good novel called The Fox in the Attic, which is meant to be part of a trilogy. He wrote, and the second one, which wasn't that great. I don't think he finished it. But he's absolutely brilliant writer. He just really gets into the totally. It's a bit like talking about Alice in Wonderland and Dreams, the child's world. So he demolished that Victorian sentimentality about children. And I think it was a very influential book at the time. I think they made a film of it in the 60s. I haven't seen it. But it has kind of been forgotten. But that's one that I press on people to read, because hardly anyone's read it, but it's really, really good.
All right, let's try the 1930s. Whose evil twin will this one be?
Evelyn. This is Evelyn Waugh, A Handful of Dust. Are you Evelyn Waugh fans?
I'm an Evelyn Waugh fan, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Not too familiar yet. This is your chance.
This is my chance to sell him. Well, he's a truly great English writer, I think. Sort of lethally exact precision prose. I think this is the third of his novels, A Handful of Dust. It's my favourite one. It knocked my socks off when I read it. So, quick synopsis for those who haven't read it. It's about a chap called Tony Last, who's this he's a bit pooterish, isn't he, really?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, a bit pooterish country gentleman. I think he's about 30. And he's devoted to, he's got an English Gothic country house, which is famously ugly. Everyone hates it except him. And he's got this wife, Brenda, who's got a sort of 7-year itch. And she goes off with a chap called John Beaver. She has an affair with him in London. And Tony's the last to know. All the friends know. Anyhow, everything sort of collapses. And he goes off on an expedition to South America. Shall I give away the ending, Jack? I don't know.
Go for it. Yeah.
So, and he he ends up imprisoned by a madman called Mr. Todd, who makes him read Dickens forever. And it ends in this sort of incredibly bleak way. So he makes him read Dickens aloud to him.
And gives really banal, uninteresting commentary on the Dickens while he's reading it. He likes his English accent. He's got this Amazonian tribe and imprisons him in the middle of the Amazon jungle, forcing him to
he makes comments like, I don't think she really meant that, or just a really plonking comment. So this poor chap, it's
And we find, I love the detail, I think in the middle of Little Dorrit, we see a contract written by a previous prisoner saying, I hereby promise that I will let my prisoner go at the end of this book, signed by Mr. Todd. But
well, it's great. So that's when he realizes he's in terrible trouble. And it's an awful ending because what Todd does is there are people, he last manages to get a note to someone who comes to trade. And Englishmen come looking for him, but this Mr. Todd drugs him while they're there, so that's when he knows he's done for. And he tells them that he's dead, and they give him his watch to prove that he's dead. And the very, very final, that isn't the final thing, is it? The very final thing is back in England. They have his memorial, and they call him an explorer on his tombstone. So it's biting satire. That's how Waugh is described. He's cruel. He's described as cruel. I mean, you probably know that he wrote this when he was in terrible depression and misery because his own wife, confusingly also called Evelyn, Shevelin, um, was having an affair with a guy called John. So that's presumably John Beaver. Um, if that is the case, and if Brenda is Evelyn, then there's a very cruel bit which you probably remember having read it as like ooh, a moment, which is where their son John dies in a horse accident, and Brenda is told this, and she says to her, "John is dead," and she thinks he means her lover John, and when she finds out it's her son John, she says, "Oh, thank God, John Andrew." She said, "Oh, thank God," and then she cries, and I mean that's a terrible thing, obviously, to put in the mouth of a mother. So whether Waugh could be very cruel. He wasn't a nice man.
No.
That great writer. Do you know the banana anecdote?
Please tell us the banana anecdote.
Well, this was told by his son Auberon, who was also a really amusing chap. Not very nice either, I don't think. So after the war, nobody had eaten bananas because of the war, and they got in like 7 bananas or something, which would be one for everyone in the family, for Evelyn and his second wife and all the kids. And he gathered them all round with the 7 bananas. Come and look at these. And he he ate them all. Made them watch while he ate them all. That was the kind of man he was.
No, and he's good at like making someone do something evil and notice that they're doing something evil, like that Catholic sensibility. He's good at doing that. I am going through with something evil, knowing it is evil. Yeah, he's good at sin. He's good at sin writing. I'm committing a sin. Yeah, the psychology of that.
So I don't think he's a cruel man, as in for its own sake. I think he's very, very sensitive, and as in he sees. You get this comes through the writing, like with George Eliot. He sees everything and notices every little thing everyone says or thinks, and he's very sensitive to the cruelty of the arbitrariness of life and the universe, and he deals with it with black humor and religion, and both of those things are in his books, and particularly after A Handful of Dust.
Yeah. It's a mixed bag. I mean, I love the first kind of half of Brideshead, just happy sunshine, treacle land, prose. But
Kingsley Amis hated Brideshead Revisited because Kingsley likes the cruel part of him, doesn't he? He thought Brideshead was a terrible book because it sucks up to the snobs and doesn't criticize them enough.
Yeah,
it's definitely the odd one out.
Christopher Hitchens said that the final scene of Brideshead was the most embarrassing scene in all of English literature.
Right, there you go. Another sort of harsh chat.
Anyway, 1940s, let's go.
Titus Groan by Mervyn Peake. Another very strange man. A very strange book. Again, are you familiar with this one? So this is...
I'm familiar with it, but I've not read it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's there's a TV series, wasn't there? I think in the 90s or something, which was all right. Anyway, prose style couldn't be more different to Waugh, because it's dense, massive over description. So someone walking down a corridor takes about 3 pages. It's very much like he was an artist, Mervyn Peake. It's like sort of cross-hatched, really dense prose. It's sort of it's first of a trilogy. The second one is Gormenghast, which is probably a more famous name, and the third one's called Titus Alone. That's no good. He was very ill by the time he wrote that. I think he'd had a lobotomy actually. That one's no good. But the first 2 are just fantastic. I read them as a teenager. It's about a castle called Gormenghast. That's really the main character, which is run on this strange sort of hierarchy, at the top of which is the Earl of Gormenghast. And Titus Groan, he's only a baby in this book. We meet him more in the other books. So this is really about this this Machiavellian character called Steerpike who climbs his way up and basically destroys the Earl and everyone in it with his manipulations and machinations. Um, yeah, I mean, the plot is kind of by the by. It's this world it creates of towers and meaningless rituals. Every day, the Earl has to go through some. Every day is a day, like the day of bright carvings or something like that. And there's all sorts of bizarre rituals. There's a breakfast, a dark breakfast, where the master of ritual has to go and stamp on all the food before they eat it. It's it's very, very funny and strange. There's a particularly vivid passage chapter. Two of the characters, there's this kind of butler called Flay, who's spidery and thin. And then there's his enemy is this chef called Swelter, who is monstrously obese. And they have this knife fight. And it's so amazingly, it's unforgettably described. It's disgusting, you know. Um, yeah, really amazing. It's like Shelob's Lair. That's what it's like, that passage. Yeah, something different.
Yeah,
A great oddity.
it reminds, I'm just picking up a sort of theme so far, which will be culminated later on, but in this list of sort of fantastic places, of
Mm.
unreal worlds that seem to be cropping up several times. The mythology of Wind in the Willows, Alice in Wonderland, Titus Groan. It's curious,
Even
curious
like
that
going to the Amazon in Handful of Dust, Treasure Island being a
mm.
island, all these
Mm.
these oases from modernity.
Yeah, maybe. There's probably lots of threads you could weave through in different ways.
Yeah. This next one
Yeah.
on the 50s is a book that's like quite close to the top of my read pile. I mean, I've had people proselytizing to me about how good this thing is, but
It's
yeah.
another description of Jack.
Well, this is The Ginger Man by J.P. Donleavy. Once had a towering reputation, but again, I think it's declined. And J.P. Donleavy himself, he wrote loads of books, a lot of them bestsellers, but almost forgotten now apart from this
We've got
book.
the wonderfully titled "The Beastly Beatitudes of Balthazar B"
That's a good
here.
one. Yeah, A
Yeah.
Singular Man's very good, and A Fairy Tale of New York is very good as well. I had a little phase of him in my 20s and got upset. Well, earlier than that. So this is not the best book of the 50s, but it's something again it's in its own genre, sui generis, you know. This was given to me when I was about 15 or 16 by my dad. And I remember him saying, "This is the sort of book that people used to hide behind newspapers on the train." Because it was, and it's sort of complete and unexpurgated. So it had a reputation as being a dirty book.
Mm.
It's by today's standards, it really isn't. Um, it's a story of a hellraiser Irish American student in Dublin. It's what's really interesting about it in a way is its publication history. So Don Levy was a sort of Irish American. He actually ended up living as a sort of English Irish Anglo-Irish country squire in Ireland, a very old man. Um, but he wrote this in his, I guess, his 20s. He was convinced it was a work of genius. It got rejected by loads of publishers on the grounds of being obscene, and he absolutely refused to cut it. So this was before the Lady Chatterley trial. But he got it published by a press called the Olympia Press in Paris, which you may know about.
Mm.
So this is a guy called Maurice Girodias, and he was putting out avant-garde stuff like Samuel Beckett, Henry Miller, that other British publishers wouldn't touch. And he published the Lolita, actually, The Naked Lunch. Anyway, Girodias published this in its uncut state, but he put it in a series called The Traveller's Companion, which is a pornographic series, sort of. And he did it because he had the authorities breathing down his neck, and he wanted to give it a veneer of literary respectability. And Don Levy, when he found out it was in this sort of series, was absolutely incensed. And he then said, right, and he cut it and got a British publisher to publish it. And then Gerodius retaliated by producing his own cut version, but with a dust jacket containing a diatribe against Don Levy. I mean, it was in the, it was understandable that he was annoyed, Don Levy, because it was in a series which had books like The Sexual Life of Robinson Crusoe in it. So anyway, they sort of had this 20-year legal battle over who owned the rights for it, which was only resolved when Don Levy's wife bought the Olympia Press, and he was thus suing himself, and he could bring it all to a close. So it's a great story. So in the meantime, long before all that, they'd had the Lady Chatterley trial, and Corgi brought out this edition, uncut, because very soon after all that, you're allowed to publish rude books. The plot is by the by. He just does terrible things. He's a horrible man, Sebastian Dangerfield, but he's a completely unforgettable character. But it's the prose. It's absolutely extraordinary. If you pick up your book there, Beastly Beatitudes, you'll see it's exactly the same style. Very choppy, Joycean switches between first person, third person in a paragraph. But it's somehow easier to follow than Joyce. It's hard to know how he did it. There's a quote from him that he said, I just tried to get the words into my readers' brains as quickly as possible. That was his style. So it's this mix of interior monologue and action. The interior monologue is so strong that things that happen in the real world are like weird interruptions. So another very unique book, like The Peak.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the 1960s, sort of a cheat selection to avoid putting Pale Fire in your list, as we have all so far managed, because
I understand that's a rule that you have to avoid putting Pale Fire in. Yeah,
you sort of do. A book compiled in the 1960s, but originally published in sections through the 1950s, possibly the definitive book of the 20th century in a way all academics of 20th century literature will hate. But it's if you approach a man on the street, specifically a man, and ask them if they've ever read a book, they will say no, and then quickly remember, hang on, I have read this one. And somehow it's an 1,000-page 1950s tome written by a bizarre academic who'd never really done any other novels. This and one other, that's his entire outfit of literature. So you may reveal the title of this auspicious text.
You may have heard of it. It's called The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Yes, as you say, I cheated because it was 3 volumes published in the 50s, but I make no apology because it should be a big, massive tome. The single volume is the correct way. You set off on an epic journey when you read this book.
That's an especially big one as well. That's a bludgeon.
This is an especially big one. This isn't the one I had when I first read it when I was 12 or so, which was the famous, I think it's an American cover, isn't it? Do you know the one with the sort of tree and the roots and Gollum?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which it was on a lot of posters. I thought I had that poster. Or it's like a Bible, isn't it, for a certain kind of man? I was obsessed with it when I was 12 or 13. I had these calendars, and I cut them up and put the pictures all over the walls. Then I became embarrassed about all that as I got a bit older. Academics was very sneery about him not very long ago, but I think that's all changed. You can be fully Tolkien nerd. There's the whole world in it, isn't there? Do you know Christopher Booker's 7 Basic Plots? You know that?
Yeah, know of it.
Yeah, it's slightly ludicrous. But anyway, I think, as I remember, he says that Lord of the Rings has all 7. So there's a million ways to take this book. For me, I've reread it. I probably read it lots of times as a teen, and then once a decade thereafter, topped up by the films, of course. But what I love about it is visiting the places, particularly the cozier places, Rivendell, the Shire, the Prancing Pony, Treebeard's place. That's why I keep rereading it, I suppose. I never liked or never got into, the Silmarillion or the appendices. I just couldn't get on with that. And it was almost like I'm glad they were there because that's the depth, but I just couldn't get on with reading them. I don't know why.
Yeah, but I think that
Um,
is an important. I'm glad they were there because it's easy enough to write the novel that implies another world. Ah, there's something out there, and it's sort of
yeah,
just hatched between the lines. But to know there is a sort of Bible, never to touch it, but to know, no, it is written out. There's a full prehistory that exists. I'm never going to look at it, but simply the knowledge of its existence creates a certain feeling of real depth. Rather
yeah,
than just like, and there's this name he threw out, oh, Glorfindel. Who the hell's that?
yeah,
Now you can get into all of that. I choose not to, but it's accessible and therefore real. So
yeah,
maybe, all these fantasists should write an unreadable tome of ancient history just to assure their fans that it exists.
Every
yeah,
Númenorian king must be named.
yeah. It's very listy, isn't it? Um,
What do you actually like apart from visiting the places and the warmth
mm.
of being in these pleasant places? Like, why do you think it encourages so many people to reread it so frequently? What is it about Lord of the Rings that you think encourages this kind of devotion?
Well, I don't know. It's all those things, isn't it? It's the fullness of the world, the depth of the world. It's escapism. Every time you read it, there's a whole load of stuff you've forgotten. Um, and the order of things happening has changed, I find. Uh, it's just so rich. There's everything there in the same way. Going back to the Pickwick Papers, that the comfort of the bookmark. There's still loads to go here, and as it goes on, you start regretting you're getting near the end. And there's obviously fantastic writing and set pieces. I never liked all the bits where he goes into sort of and lo and behold. They always jarred with me a bit, but because his writing isn't even. Um, but the writing kind of suits where you are in the story.
There's a
It kind
big
of grips you, doesn't it?
continuity between the world of Pickwick's England and Hobbiton. I
Very
feel like
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like without this England that never really existed, that Dickens sort of invents in the 1830s, it would be hard to have the kind of this green and pleasant land picture that the hobbits represent. You remember the 2012 Olympics opening ceremony?
I do.
The Britain at the
Mm,
start before the Industrial Revolution
yeah.
destroys it, just clearly based on Hobbiton.
That's Hobbiton, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Should we move on to our fifth children's
Yes.
book?
Right. Hang on. Yeah. So
Oh,
no, no, no. So you'll have noticed there's a lot of humour in my choices. I like funny books. So this is the only deadly serious one, is the book about the talking bunny rabbits. And this is Watership Down by Richard Adams. Uh, I'm in awe of him for writing it. I assume you've both read it?
No,
I've seen the
No,
film, the
no.
extremely
really?
traumatizing
Wow.
film.
Okay.
Yeah, just got the
Yeah.
trauma
Well,
again. The bright eyes, the spirit bunny going
yeah, the
under
film
the
is,
pylons.
yeah, the film gets most of it across, as I remember. It's pretty good. Um, yeah, I just admire the nerve of it, the chutzpah of it, the hutchpah of writing about rabbits. Quite extraordinary. And taking it deadly seriously. So this was it tells so quick synopsis. There's a bunch of rabbits, and by the way, you're immediately taking the rabbits very seriously. You forget that no, you don't forget they're rabbits because that's really important, but you go with it. Um, uh, and they live in this little warren, which one of them has a vision it's going to be destroyed, which it is. A very brave rabbit called Hazel leads a gang of them away. They go through all sorts of perils to Watership Down, where they start their own little idyllic society. But then they need some does because they're all male. So they have to go off and find some. And they come across this evil bunny called General Woundwort. Anyway, there's two things that make this a really interesting book to me. And while you're reading it and when you think about it, one is the political societies of the rabbits. So whether they're allegories or not, that's probably oversimplistic. But so the first one is like the Shire, which is called Consults Notes. Sandalford. Yeah, Sandalford is where they start, which is Hobbiton basically. But they're very complacent. They can't imagine leaving, so they ignore the warning signs and they get destroyed horribly. They're all gassed. Um, and then so they go off and they form Watership Down, which is like a little pluralistic society where everyone's talents can flourish, a liberal democracy. But on the way, they come across two other rabbit societies, Efrafa, which is the totalitarian one, run by this General Woundwort, which has got constant surveillance. So basically, they've sacrificed freedom for security. It's very efficient. It's a horrible hell, basically, to live in. But before that, you get the most creepy, weird one of all, which is Cowslip's Warren, where the rabbits, they come across them, the rabbits are all well fed, but they're weird, that they make odd art. And what it turns out is they don't have to get food because the humans leave it out, but the humans also leave snares because they're being fattened up to be eaten. So the rabbits have made this kind of pact with death, and they live in this culture of denial about it. And the way they do that is they suppress the bunny religion, which is the other very interesting thing about this book, which is the rabbits have their own mythology. They have a sort of a creator god, Frith, who's the sun god. And then they have this folk hero called El-Harara, something like that. The prince with 1,000 enemies, who's a trickster rabbit, and they have folk tales about him. And then they have the black rabbit of Inlay, who's the spirit rabbit you're talking about, he's death, basically. He's not evil, but he's associated with death. When you die, you run with him off to paradise, bunny paradise. But both of those things, the way they live and the religion, are all based, it's very clever, on the fact that rabbits, everything wants to eat or kill them. They live in a world where, foxes and owls and roads, humans, dogs, cats, everything can kill them at any time. So they've got this religion to deal with that. And they've got these various political systems to sort of cope it out. It's a really great book, I think.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like Evil Wind in the Willows. We've got another.
Well, Wind in the Willows, yeah, it's not a religion. They just come across the god Pan, really. They're not religious, the characters in that. Whereas this is really part of the rabbit culture, is this religion, and that's why that Warren is weird, in that it suppresses the religion. They don't know all the stories of the trickster god.
Yeah, I suppose the
nearly there.
Piper at the Gates of Dawn is like like a mystery cult, and the Watership Down bunny religion's more institutionalized, more like, they've got a catechism. Yeah, nearly there. 1980s.
1980s.
His name has come up quite a lot before he's finally arrived.
Yeah.
This is Kingsley Amis, The Old Devils. So this is old Kingsley, as opposed to, I think it's the best. I think it's better than Lucky Jim even, which is young Amos. It's quite sad. It's about it's very Welsh. It's three married couples in Wales who sort of just drink all day, and they've got a long history together. The men drink in the pubs. The women drink gin and tonics at home. They bitch about each other, but they all remember the past a bit differently. And then into their lives comes these people from their past. Alan, who's a fantastic character. By the way, there's a very good BBC adaptation of this, which from I think the 80s, 90s, which is on iPlayer, it was. But Alan is this kind of professional Welshman who's an expert on Bryden, which is like a disguised Dylan Thomas. But he's complete vain, blowhard, a fraud. He knows he's a fraud. And then his wife, Rhiannon, all the men are basically in love with her from when they were young. Everything gets unsettled. Various things happen. Anyway, it's a book about, there's a kind of a happy ending, which is unusual, I think, for Kingsley Amis, is it? So it's kind of about character as destiny. All the past is very intermingled with what's happening to them now in the present. They've all got these regrets that have never left them. They've never got over the things, which is quite sort of Yeah, it's something to think about. Uh, yeah, it really, it's very funny. The Welshness is important. There's a big gap between this sort of phony Wales that Alan makes his living off of promoting and the mundane reality of these Welsh second-rate restaurants and pubs and
Yeah, and I suppose this is Kingsley now writing when his son is not only writing himself, but it's quite established. I think like Money,
mm,
Martin Amos's probably most
yeah.
celebrated novel comes out, I think around the same time, maybe even in the same year. There's kind of
Yes.
this, yeah,
Well, Kingsley famously threw it across the room, money, didn't he, when he encountered the character
of
called
Martin
Martin Amis.
Amis.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Do you think Martin will be read in 50 years? I think Kingsley will, but I don't know if Martin will.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Money a lot. Just the stuff. Also, the novel by Martin Amis is
By
very.
Martin Amis, yeah.
Yeah, it's but yeah. No, I think Money's pretty strong actually. Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah.
I I
That's
I,
that'd be
don't-
the one, wouldn't
I think London Fields and the information and like
it? Mm.
not up to
Zone of
scratch. Not up
Interest.
to scratch.
Yeah.
Zone of Interest
The-
has an interesting kind of afterlife because it's now attached to this possibly superior film, but it will be remembered as the source of this possibly superior film for eternity. And
right.
talking about possibly superior films, let's hit the 1990s, which I
Oh,
believe you're
yeah.
using a single book to stand in for a vast series of books.
Yeah. Well, this is the last one, and this is called Blewett the Mizzen, but it's just standing. This is Patrick O'Brien. It's standing for Patrick O'Brien's so-called Aubrey-Maturin series of 20 novels. I don't know. Again, are you familiar with these? Have you read them or just seen
I've
the
not.
film?
Love Master and Commander the film.
Yeah.
Um, I can imagine the book that it would be based on quite vividly. Could be completely wrong, but I have a real strong vision
Well,
of the book that spawned that
yeah.
film.
The film is based on The Far Side of the World, which is number 10. So halfway through the series. So
Good one to
you could
pick.
pick.
Just
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess that had a good story. I mean, yeah, Patrick O'Brien. He's often compared to Jane Austen. Austen saw Mare is on the back by who? I don't know who said that. Um, yeah, I think if my Desert Island book, if I could take all those as one volume, this would be it. This is something I read. I read it in cycles, and when I go on holiday, I take about three or four of these. Just so well written. It's got everything in it. So it's based on just two characters, Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin. They're kind of yin and yang. Jack is the ship's captain. He's brilliant at sea. He's brave, bluff. He's a great tactician. Hopeless on land. Everyone rips him off. And then Stephen Maturin is the exact opposite. He's a spy. He's a surgeon. He's a Roman Catholic, uh, which is important in various ways. He's a naturalist. He's half Irish, half Catalan, and he's into all these independence movements and things. He's very brittle. He's a great character, um, and they do grow over the whole 20 books. He's also an opium addict, which is important. Um, what they've got in common is their love of music. So Maturin plays the cello and Aubrey plays the fiddle, and they play sort of Mozart and things together. Um, if you haven't read them, I really would. You're missing out. That's as good as it gets, I think. For it transcends historical fiction. There's everything in it. There's battles and chases and things, but it's just there's also the ship is like a floating world, so it's drawing room comedy of manners, brilliantly done as well. Because the ship is a self-contained world with its own rules, its hierarchy and its rituals, and yeah, just amazing. He ended Patrick O'Brien, I think, could have written anything, but he ended up ploughing this furrow.
and what do you think of the film as an adaptation? I assume you were already a fan at the time it came out. Was it sort of
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I
yeah, sort of great realization or didn't quite hit the mark?
uh, No, it's a really good film, but it doesn't get anywhere near the depth. There's nothing on land for a start. It's just an adventure, really. What I think the best bit of that film, I mean, Maturin, in my imagination, looks nothing like the chap who played him, although um, Russell Crowe's pretty good as Jack Aubrey. Um, he's sort of more wizened than that. The best bit of that film is when they go on the Galapagos and they sort of go around. It interrupts all the action, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they just go around and collect some animals up, and that does capture the spirit of the books. Um, it's not sort of action tales. It's not like Hornblower, for example, which I also really love. Um, it's much deeper than that.
Do you have any relation to boats? There's been a handful of boat novels on this list.
Maybe, yeah. I grew up in Portsmouth. My dad was at sea.
Okay.
Maybe a bit of that. I've never been to sea myself. Well, I've been on boats. Yeah.
But you've been many places in literature. You've sailed
I've been
all over the place with
exactly so.
Aubrey and co.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's 200 years.
That's 200 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, it was lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the earliest fans, really.
I wouldn't say fan.
Okay,
I'd
one of
say
the earliest
Enemy.
sort of dispassionate watchers.
steady on, Milo.
Yeah, one of
Patrons.
the.
I like to consider myself a
Yes.
patron of the arts. No, I think what you're doing is fantastic. Yeah. So keep it up, and I'm very impressed by how much reading you get done.
We don't have serious jobs.